Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my Oceans film ranking all 4 films of the 21st century Oceans films, so we're not including the original, which I haven't seen. If I had, I probably would include it. Also, as you can probably hear, there's a really annoying bird. Excuse me, shut up! That never works. Oh well, so today we will be ranking Oceans 11, the remake, Oceans 12, Oceans 13, and the new film Oceans 8, which serves as a spin-off to the other 3 films. So, like I said, we're not talking about the original because I haven't seen it. So, oh well. So let's get started with number... before we start, I actually want to do the ranking I had this time last year with the original 3 films. The ranking was 3 Oceans 12, 2 Oceans 11, and 1 Oceans 13. The reason was I didn't quite get into the first 2 that much, but the third one was a bit more interesting because of the personal side to it. But in preparation for Oceans 8, I went and rewatched the trilogy, and there's been a few changes. And then Oceans 8, as I mentioned in my review, I've seen twice. Wasn't intending to be twice at the cinema, but oh well. So, I've now got a better opinion of that one, as I mentioned in the review. And so, how does it fit into the ranking along with the changes? Well, let's start. As soon as I stop burping. Number 4. I didn't tell you the years that they came out. The remake, Ocean's 11, the remake was 2001. Ocean's 12 was 2004. Ocean's 13 was 2007, and Ocean's 8 is 2018. The original was 1960 something. It'll be down below. So let's get started. Number 4. This one has been my least favourite since I first watched it, and the rewatch, whilst I liked it a bit more on the rewatch, it still wasn't that great. And that is Oceans 12, the second of the three films. Well, 4 films now. I'm not sure what the thing is, because it got a bit more interesting on the rewatch, and it pretty much works out. Technically, it should be a better story than 13, but I just didn't quite get into it as much. Rewatching it, I got into it a bit more. Earlier on, stuff I could get into a bit more, but it just wasn't that amazing. It was good, it was really good, but it wasn't that great. Just a bit of a struggle at some points. I'm not sure, it wasn't amazing. It was good, but it wasn't amazing. I think that was a kind of a problem I had. Just didn't really like it that much. Thought it was interesting. And the Europol coming after them, someone's noticed, and some people have noticed, so the Europol, the thieves, and Terry Benedict's found out who everyone is. So it's all interesting that people have started to work out who they are and have started coming after them or trying to compete with them or trying to catch them. But in the end, it isn't that great. And also, I think this one is a bit more complicated in how it's sorting its stuff out. I mentioned in the Ocean's 8 review that they kind of did a out of nowhere additional fess in a similar sense to Logan Lucky, but better. This one does a similar thing, a bit more than whilst the other 2 is kind of a bit more how they did, a bit more revealing how they did it, or they just show you, or they have another plan to do it, or the next stage in the plan. So, yeah. But in the end, it's still a pretty good film. It's not terrible. It could have been worse. It's not Logan Lucky, although I would score it to 7 out of 10. Same as Logan Lucky. That film, this one is a lot better. even if it's the same score, it's the same score, but it's a higher 7 than Logan Lucky's. That one was just, so this one's, this is pretty good. It's not great. I think what lets this one down more than the other ones, though, besides some of the stuff I've already mentioned, what I really don't like about this one is some of the way it's filmed and edited. It feels like it's trying to be like the Jason Bourne films for some reason, and let's be honest, apart from the first one, the shaky cam and the quick editing isn't completely effective. It's good at some points, but other points it just feels like you're getting a bit sick and dizzy, and it feels really nasty, especially in the fourth one's case. A lot of people complain about it a bit more, although that one didn't have as much at the start. It was about a good 20-25 minutes until they started using shaky cams and shitty editing, and 2 and 4 basically have 2 of the worst film fights of the series, of the Bourne series. If you look at number 1, it's a lot better filmed. So, I wouldn't really say too much of the problem is with the editor, the director. I would say more the editor and the cinematographer. They've got to slow down, and they've got to not be too shaky of the camera in the next film. So, there was this one, there was some shaky cam moments, and there was some unnecessary zooming, especially when the gang is brought out to the cars from the Italian prison. You get to see a person at a time. It's like Rusty's brought out by 2 guards. I think Linus has 2 with him plus the officials. So it's not like it's more for. I think it's more so you can have a character for a moment. But it's not like you could have 2 prisoners brought out at once. That, I think they should have done that. They should have had 2 people come out at once, and you could still have the camera zoom in for them, but you're not doing it 12 fucking times. You're doing it 6 maybe, or 6 or 7. 8 at maximum, but not 12. 12, not 12 or 13. God. So yeah, I think it's a bit more poorly handled in the filming and editing wise, and I did have a little gripe with one case in Ocean's 8, but compared to what they do in this film, that's unnoticeable, even though it pretty much is. And so, yeah, that's Ocean 12. Number 3. This one went down a bit, in my opinion, and I think it just isn't as great of a story as I used to think it was. However, it is... I don't know about if the story isn't as... I think the story's the weakest of them, but the personal side of it and the way it's actually handled and the filming, editing and execution of the film as a whole is a lot better than its predecessor, and that is Ocean's 13. Yeah, and basically in this one what happens is that Ruben is portrayed by Al Pacino's character, and Willie Bank, who the 11 plus additional teammates decide to rob Willie as a way to kind of get payback, and it works. It's a pretty good installment. Like I said, I think the story's not as great as number 12, maybe because of the people coming after him, but it's handled a lot better. I think the characters on both films work really well, but I think the personal side just amps it up a little bit. There's some people outside, let's ignore them. I think the filming is a lot better. The filming and editing of the film is a lot better. It's a bit more like the first film rather than the second one, and that is an improvement in my opinion. And it's probably the simplest when you think about it. When you think about it, it's probably the simplest plan. As tricky and convoluted as it is, it's probably the simplest. When you get your head round it, it makes a lot of sense. It's easiest to follow, providing you know what's going on. Although that is sometimes a problem. Sometimes you aren't as certain of what's going on as like in the other 3 films. So that can be a bit of a issue. But overall, it's pretty interesting. Well, actually, no, not that. It's not that interesting. Well, it was on the first viewing, but the second viewing, not so much. I would say the concept is interesting. The story isn't so great, but the concept is interesting, and it's executed really well. And yeah, it's a big improvement on the second one in all but story term. In all terms but story. As I wasn't really the biggest fan of Tess, so I was like, she's not in this one, okay. Not terribly worried, but not sure why not. Same with Catherine Zeta-Jones' character from the second film. They didn't want to come back for the third one. Alright, it's not a big worry about them. They could always come back in 9 or 10, but not a big worry at the moment. This one's mainly focused on D11 and Terry Benedict, helping them at one point, bringing payback to Willie Bank after what he did to Ruben, who is actually nearly dies in this one. He's almost on his deathbed. He's pretty close to death, but he recovers and he's able to come back and make an appearance. That's good, and thank goodness he did. Otherwise, we wouldn't have him in Ocean's 8. We'd probably have another character. Not Yen, as he pops up later, but probably another one. So, thank goodness Ruben doesn't die in this film. We'll save because A, he comes back in Ocean's 8, and B, a major character from this trilogy dies off-screen before the events of Ocean's 8. And if you've seen the review, you will know who. So that's Ocean's 13. Number 2, we were just talking about this film just a second ago, about Ruben coming back in this film. Yes, this of course is the newest film, Ocean's 8. The all-female cast does not bother me one bit. In fact, this new cast might actually be better than some of the old ones. I at least know who everybody is. I might not know everybody's name, but I will know which actor's playing who. Whilst with some of the original ones, I lost a bit of track on some of them. Especially the two brothers, and I think the two brothers were the case where I struggled to work out who was who the worst. I got Danny, I got Rusty, I got Linus, I think it was an Italian, it might be Portuguese guy. It was the two old ones. One of them was Ruben, one of them was another retired one. Then it was the two brothers, that's 8. And then there was Yen. And then 2 others. The black ones. The black skin ones. Oh, those ones were easy to work out with. One of them was the British one, who played by War Machine himself, Don Cheadle, and Bernie Mac as a card player. And then, of course, 12 and 13 added new members of the crew. Well, 12, I would say, probably Tess. And then 13 got some newbies on board to help out. So, but, okay, but when I first watched these films, I wasn't completely able to follow everybody. I think I was a bit better at following everybody on the rewatches, but I kind of struggled. And on the third film's rewatch, there were the new characters they introduced. I think they were hardly used, apart from maybe Linus's dad. And like his mum in the second film, he kind of got him out of some trouble as part of the plan. I think with Ocean's 8, the fact they have less people kind of improves it. You at least know who's who. You got Debbie, of course. You got Lou, Rose. I think her name's Amy. It's Mindy Kaling's character. Constance. I think her name's Tammy. And Rhiannon's character, Nineball. And of course, Daphne later on. Plus the return of Yen for a little bit. So that one was these characters. I was able to follow these characters easier, especially on a first viewing. With the other ones, like I said, it was a bit more of a struggle to follow them on a first viewing, and in the case of the third film, second viewing even, for the new characters. Whilst with this one, totally fine. Absolutely fine. So I think the point is to get the smaller cast kind of works. And maybe you know them a bit more, maybe they're a bit more distinctive. So I think I just understood them a bit more, and I think they were introduced a bit. I think the time introducing them was a bit slower. I think with Ocean's 11, they kind of did a bit of a montage for some of them, whilst this time they took their time to introduce the characters a little bit and develop them a little bit, and even gave us a surprise one towards the end. Not towards the end, in the last third, and also another surprise return for a bit. So that's good, and hopefully they'll keep the same thing up for 9 and 10 if they do those, and introduce more characters. So they can do what in Ocean's 12 and introduce other genders, introduce the other gender as part of the team. Like I said, I think Tess is the 12th member of the team in Ocean's 12, so I wouldn't be surprised if Yen or someone joined, or a male joins the team in Ocean's 9 or Ocean's 10. So that it's always open. And yeah, and people saying that it's a bit of it's not a gimmick, but that it hasn't been done well. That the old women's reboot film. This is a spin-off, not a reboot. It's not done very well. Oh, they've got the different gender cast, and now they can't make a good movie. Shut up! It's a good movie. If you don't like it, fair enough. But don't say it's a bad movie just because it's an all-female cast. I haven't seen the Ghostbusters film. I've heard mixed reviews of it, although there was more negativity before it came out than after. So that's a good sign, I suppose. The fact that some people were actually surprised and maybe not loved it, but they didn't hate it. Maybe certainly not as much as the people screaming about it beforehand. I mean, seriously, this is the 21st century, guys. Get yourself in the present day. I can't believe people like that still exist. I mean, you can. Some people could argue that making it all female might let it down a bit, but at the same time, but that doesn't mean you have to go into super hate mode, like nuclear bomb hate mode. And thankfully this one didn't get as much of a hate backlash when it was announced or the casting was announced. Though I think now that it's come out, some people still think it's kind of like gimmicky or something, and that the plot's it's just not a good movie. It's just the new cast and all that, and yeah, the all-female center reboots or spin-off stuff, it could get a bit gimmicky instead of giving them their own franchises. Similar to the fact that they're trying to make Jane Bond just because Doctor Who's regenerated into a woman. To let you know, Doctor Who can do that. It's part of the character's biology and the backstory of the from where they come from. Whilst James Bond, they just swap the actor every now and again. So having it change into a woman, just make it a new character. James Bond wouldn't work as a woman. Just make another character. This is not sexist. This is keeping in line with the character. And the same if they went black. Although granted, that would work if it wasn't the same timeline as the previous one, and if the next one was also black. So like, if they rebooted the series after Daniel Craig left, then they could get a black Bond in and commit to it. But if it's after Daniel Craig, but if it's the same timeline, then it's a bit complicated. It's like having Colin Salmon replace Pierce Brosnan within the same timeline. I would be totally fine. I'm just more in terms of casting, I would have been fine, but in terms of keeping the characters, and it's more about the characters rather than the skin. So that's why with Doctor Who, like I said, the Doctor can regenerate into anyone he or she wants or can be, and that's the same for the Time Lords in general. So characters like Doctor Who, I don't know why people are saying, "Oh, the Doctor can't be a woman because it's always been a man." Do you know that the Doctor can regenerate into literally anything? Whilst, like, characters in James Bond's like, "Oh, Doctor Who's given its main character become a woman now, so woman for James Bond." Yeah, just make a new character. It's not like, it's like saying, it's like putting them in the same camp. It's not the same camp. It's like having a black Sherlock or a white Blade or a female female Poirot or a male Miss Marple. Doctor Who's different, and as for films like Ghostbusters and Ocean's 8, they're just bringing in new characters, so it's a bit different, so you don't have to worry about that type of thing. So I don't get the hate for this. In some cases it worked, like Doctor Who, it works. In some cases, like Ocean's 8 and Ghostbusters, it's different, so it does work. So it can work. So different characters, it works. If it's written into the character's character, that they can change gender, race, etc., that works. But if it's just change for the sake of change, unless maybe it's trying to give it a different interpretation or rebooting it or something, but apart from that, then it doesn't work. And so another example could be Hamilton musical. They allow black actors into to play white characters, but I don't think it's a historically accurate story. The play, at least. So that's okay. That's fine because it's not queen historical accuracy. There's at one point during the song "Satisfied," the character Angelica says that she is the oldest, and her father had no sons, i.e., she has no brothers. But the fact that her father had 19 children, including several boys, so that, and probably by that point of when the song's being set, certainly had a couple, probably. So you can tell it's not historically accurate. So that's fine. But if it was trying to be historically accurate, probably wouldn't work as well. So yeah, I think it was a bit more loose on the historical accuracy, or just overlooked some stuff. So that's fine. But if it was trying to be historical accurate, then the right roles had to go with right people. And that's the same with other historical accurate stuff. If it's not historical accuracy, it's fine. So I just don't understand the hate. Going back to the film, yeah, Ocean's 8's a really fun film. It's really enjoyable. It's probably, after Ocean's 13, it's probably the simplest to understand, and it makes a bit more sense than certainly Logan Lucky. So, yeah, I'm pretty much bashing Logan Lucky in these videos, aren't I? Well, that was boring as shit, whilst these films are lots more fun, especially this one and the next one, which we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, and I found the cast really good, as well, as I said, really good thing. The only really thing I can't really say is that great about this film is that there isn't a sense of threat like the other films have. They don't, apart from some moments, it doesn't feel like they're going to get caught very well. It seems too perfect. Even when there's a hiccup or two, they fix it or they adapt to it, and then the surprises happen and look, and like, oh, okay, it's part of this. It's part of the plan. It's part of the setup. It's all this. So there's barely any threat, and I think that's the problem some people are having with it, and I can see why. So 9 and 10 have to up the threat. Not too much yet, but definitely up it. Certainly to the levels as the other three. Or have it as part of the plan, like in number 12 did. That was pretty good once you understood that. So yeah, that's Ocean's 8. I don't get the hate. That rhymed, but it isn't perfect. And nor is number 1, but number 1 is still a really good film, and that is Ocean's 11. The first film, technically a remake of an original, but from what I've read of the remake, that might be one of the lower ones, to be honest. The story doesn't sound as good for that one. It sounds a bit dull. Execution-wise, it's probably one of the better ones, though. So probably wouldn't have the same filming techniques as Ocean's 12. And casting-wise, works Frank Sinatra, so might be good. So but from the story-wise, it sounded weak. The remake, on the other hand, probably has the best stories. I think Ocean's 8 copied a little bit. I forgot to mention this. They copy a bit at the start with the main character, an Ocean, getting released from prison after a couple of years, meeting up with their partner in crimes, who becomes like the second main person in the heist, and then they go around recruiting. This time, I think, like I said, I think Ocean's 8 did the recruiting bit a bit better, but Ocean's 11's story and the plan, I think it works as well, and I think there is a bit more threat level, certainly with Danny then being red flagged at about halfway through, once we find out that his ex-wife is now dating the casino owner, Terry Benedict. So, yeah, and also the fact that the vault they're trying to get into is a bit more secure. is very secure. That is tricky. It's probably the trickiest one, to be honest. And I think, yeah, going back to Ocean's 8 being a bit too safe, not having that much threat, that was pretty easy. Because once they had their magnets, that was pretty easy, all things considered. This one was a bit more tricky. Apologies. They had to cause a blackout just to get into the vault, and in the third one, they had to cause some earthquakes, just to cause some problems. So, yes, it's a bit more. There's a bit more threat. There is also some really good character moments, although, like I said, I think I prefer number 8, but there are some really good character moments, and they do flesh them out quite a bit. And it does work as a character bit. Both 11 and 8 do work really well with their characters, I will say that. But I think the thing Ocean's 11 has over 8 is, I think the story's just that little bit better, especially adding the threat and the uncertainty of their success. And it works very well. It isn't too safe. It's pretty bold. It's probably the boldest plan, to be honest, out of all of them. So, yeah, and the fact that they could pull it off with ease. Well, not quite easy. It's not as easy as number 8 or even 13. It's probably the trickiest one, to be honest. Yeah, this or one of the ones in 12. But yeah, it worked out really well, and I think the character dynamics earlier on, it just makes sense. And also thinking about it, you can kind of follow the characters a little bit in this one. Maybe it gets a bit trickier later on in the series, but certainly for this one, it's almost as easy as number 8. Not quite as easy because there's less people there. But with this one, you can just about follow it. I think it gets trickier. I think number 13 is the trickiest, when they're bringing the newer ones who don't really do much. And 12, they're just all over the place. So it's a bit easier to follow them in this film. So yeah, it's pretty well done and really well handled and executed. And yep, no shitty filming, no shitty shaky cam or terrible editing, and no zooming in on on one person at a time. They can show more than one person in a shot, and this is main character, not just person help escorting them or anything. Yeah, so in my opinion, I think Ocean's 11 is the best. Maybe Ocean's 8 does come a very close second, but for the moment, 11 is still number 1. Well, since the rewatches, I mean, like I said, 13 was originally number 1, but then they swapped, and then 8 snuck in between them. But number 12 has always been at the bottom. And like I said, I haven't seen the original. Story-wise, it probably would be the weakest, but execution-wise could help it bump itself up to between 12 and 13, or between 13 and 8. But I don't think it'll be going between 8 and 11. And to be honest, I don't know whether I'm not sure whether the sequels to 8 will be better or not, if they do make them. If they make Ocean's 9 and Ocean's 10, make 2 trilogies, I'm not sure whether they'll be better or worse. Considering this one, one of them was better than the original, but the other one wasn't, and then the rewatches, they're both not as good, but one of them is better than the other. And then the spin-off wise, almost as the original, better than the other two. How is this going to reflect on on its sequels, if it gets any? Which I kind of hope it does. I do hope that we do get an Ocean's 9 and an Ocean's 10, possibly in 2021 and 2024 respectively, every 4 years, or maybe they'll do it in 2. I'm not sure. They're doing the Jurassic World ones in 3 years instead of 4 years now, and Star Wars, the episodic ones, are every 2 years instead of every 3 years. So we might be getting the Ocean's films every 2 or 3 years. I'm not sure. Won't be surprised. So that's it. Thank you for watching my ranking, and I'll remind you of what it is. Number 4 is Ocean's 12 from 2004. Number 3 is Ocean's 13 from 2007. Number 2 is Ocean's 8 from 2018. If you want full thoughts on the film, go and see what I believe is pretty much a very long review. It's probably my longest review for a good couple of months. Yeah, I would say it's a good couple of months. Maybe all the way since Powder Daleks' DVD review. But definitely the longest one for a good couple of months. And number 1, Ocean's 11, the remake, with to be announced when I see it, the original Ocean's 11, which I predict will either be between 12 and 13, or 13 and 8, depending on the execution. If it's like what I think, story-wise at the moment it's below 12, but execution and enjoyment and how the story relates onto film, as opposed to just in a written-up bit, could be a bit of a difference. So we'll see. Prediction-wise, it's second weakest, but we'll see. Second weakest or the middle. At the moment, we'll see. And the same for any future sequels to Ocean 8. Please, I would like it. I'm not going to pray for them, but like I would for Lethal Weapon 5, for instance. I'm not going to pray for that. I'm not going to pray for Oceans 9 and 10 the same way I'm going to pray for Lethal Weapon 5. But I would certainly like Oceans 9 and Oceans 10 if this one does well enough to get sequels. I wouldn't be surprised if they did make them though. That'd be good. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.